Hey guys, so I was going to start doing a little bit of video blogging for you guys because I think it's a great way to communicate with the audience that I have here on She Loves Science, and also to bring about some communication back and forth with us, especially as we're in a pandemic. It's harder to get out to schools and really interact with students like I like to, be an author. But also I just thought it'd be a great way to talk about a few things that were on my mind and see what you guys thought. So I'm not sure if you saw this recently, but there was here in Texas, we've had some crazy snowstorm issues. So we have been dealing with snowing over the last week or so. And we've had a lot of power outages, a lot of water issues. We have family that are still battling issues with their water supplies and power. So we are here in Texas really handling extreme weather conditions that nobody ever anticipated could happen in Texas. It was such a crazy time, and I have never been so thankful for this little generator that powers our house that we just recently moved into, and makes me realize how much we are going to be maintaining that thing to make sure that it keeps our power on. So I hope this video finds you guys safe and warm and doing well. But during that storm and during our, isolation with the storm and the roads, we were able to watch the Mars Perseverance rover landing, and that was something we totally needed to be distracted from all of the plumbing issues that were happening around us and things. So the kids loved making these Mars landers that we used with index cards and tape and straw, and we had like a little design contest here where we try to figure out how to make the best lander design. And we did all this before we watched the Perseverance. And of course, as you're watching a Mars landing, you're kind of not necessarily watching the landing itself. You're watching the scientists and engineers and people in the mission control that are listening to what's happening and conveying to the audience of what is going on. And you kind of have to trust that when they're all going, yay, and it's actually landing, that it's actually happening. And of course, they transmitted the first image from Mars Perseverance when it landed. So that was an interesting thing to wait for. But during the course of the coverage of the rover landing, it made me reflect back on when we went back pre-pandemic times. We went over spring break to the Witt Museum in San Antonio in 2019. And in that museum, there was an exhibit called Planet Pioneers. And Planet Pioneers was where they had set up kind of a Martian Mars exhibit where you could see Martian rocks, you could see, you could simulate training on Mars, and you could see a Martian sunrise. And the kids and I loved it. My family and I loved it. We were able to go into a ride that simulated a G-force on us. And one of my so if you have a chance to visit a museum that has Planet Pioneers still there, the Witt Museum, I think it's moved on from, but I highly recommend it. But one of the things that I enjoyed watching was, or seeing, was my daughter doing she was able to listen to Martian wind and be able to touch a rock from Mars that was part of a meteorite. So she was actually literally listening to the wind on Mars that was transmitted from Mars, the InSight lander. So there's something on Mars right now called the InSight, and it's actually a stationary lander that stayed on Mars and is looking into dust and wind data and sending it back to Earth. So that was the very first wind transmission ever sent, so that you could hear the wind of Mars, but you could also touch part of Mars that was a meteorite. So I didn't fully appreciate the fact that that was what the Perseverance was doing, was it's bringing back actual samples that they know the location of where it landed, and where they've been able to choose the exact location called the Jezero crater, where they believe to be, ancient microbial life, and they're taking samples of this with the Mars Perseverance. So it was so interesting because Allie, my daughter, has always wanted to be wanted to go to Mars. And so that was kind of a cool moment where I got to see her listening to Martian wind and touching a Martian meteorite rock. But what I realize now, and what I want to talk to you guys about too, was the Mars samples that are being collected by the Perseverance aren't actually going to be back on Earth until hopefully 2026, 2028. And that's actually when I started thinking about it, I was like, my oldest will be going to college at that point. And the samples that are being brought back will probably not be analyzed, perhaps, by the current engineers that got the Perseverance to Mars. The actual samples will probably be analyzed by our children's generation, which gave me a really big aha moment of how important it is for us to be encouraging our daughters now, especially, to consider engineering and the sciences. And I wanted to be here as a virtual mentor, I suppose, of what it's like to be a female engineer and what it takes to be an engineer, what you're going to run into, what you may see, the highs and the lows. So part of doing this video blogging is to provide some insight into that. Of course, I never worked in NASA. That'd be awesome. I was never a rocket scientist or engineer, but there's similar things that I think women and girls would encounter in engineering. So I hope that kind of gives you a feel for what I'll be doing and sharing with you in these videos. I think that it's really interesting that we're seeing first evers with Mars. We're seeing the first ever transmitted wind from Mars. We're seeing the first ever samples being collected in a certain place and stored in the underground in Mars. We're going to see the first return. They're actually going to have to go get a little buggy to pick up these samples and blast them off in a first ever rocket launch from another planet to get these samples back to Earth. And then we'll see the first ever understanding of perhaps microbial ancient life on Mars. So all of this is kind of getting lined up for our children to see what's going to happen. So I hope you enjoyed this video blog. Please let me know your thoughts about the things you'd like for me to cover, topics regarding engineering and science, and what you think your daughters need to hear, and how to encourage them. And I'll just jump on and give you my thoughts occasionally on the current events and what's going on and the exciting things that are happening. So hope you enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you soon.